I just got through watching the first two episodes of the Rings of Power, or I think it's Rings of Power. And symbolism must be powerful. It must be more powerful than I've ever given it credence to. And I'm not going to pretend that I am smart enough to be able to tell you how influential symbolism is. I just know that it is used a whole bunch. So for instance, if a man goes out and he gets tattoos all the way up his neck, he is trying to promote a certain type of symbol. And if another man is wearing a golf shirt and he's got a big fat cigar hanging out of his mouth and a gold watch, then he is also trying to promote some kind of symbolism as well. And people connect and react and reverberate with symbols. And so there must be a lot of power in symbolism. Now, when it comes to the original Lord of the Rings series, let me go ahead and say, and I'm going to spoil some of the first two episodes, so if you don't want that to happen, then watch those first and then watch this video. But if you have watched the Lord of the Rings series, and you know anything about J.R.R. Tolkien, you'll know that he wrote about good and evil, and he took a lot of examples and symbols out of the Bible, and it was a whole struggle of good versus evil and good triumphing. And as Christians, we knew this. We knew the symbolism there. We knew J.R.R. Tolkien's background. We heavily supported these movies because why not? How little are Christians catered to in their wants and desires in this day and age? And so when these movies came out, like, we were fascinated. And we were so thankful that $100 million, I think, per movie was spent in crafting these movies. And they turned out phenomenally well because there is a huge Christian base out there that likes these movies and loves the symbolism, at least behind them. And we know that things are good and wholesome that we're watching. So this must have been just too powerful for Satan to deal with. And so he is now piggybacking off of the Lord of the Rings with the Rings of Power. Now, I knew immediately that since this new series, this TV series, was going to be secular, that it was for the entire world audience, I knew that they were going to distort some things. And I had in my mind's eye that they would probably do some things backwards. That is exactly what they have done. The Christian focus of the original Lord of the Rings series must have been so powerful that it gave Satan a black eye, because he has come back in a flurry trying to get people to watch this new Rings of Power series and to endorse that. And the goal is, and is often accomplished if you follow things like this, the goal is to totally erase any good or Christian concept from out of any mental connection in the original Lord of the Rings. So basically, if Rings of Power now can be run for, 6, 8, 10 seasons and can be run in a worldly fashion, the world as we know it will only be accustomed to and more familiar with the Rings of Power TV series, and they'll never even, reference the originals, and it'll just be kind of wiped clean of Christianity. I noticed this years ago when I read Robinson Crusoe when I was little, it didn't say anything about God or the Bible or anything like that. And then when I was told to read it later on in school, I found out that, in my later education, that it was filled with Christianity. I saw something similar to that here recently with Disney. A Wrinkle in Time, the author said her intent was to glorify God in the book, and especially, Jesus Christ. But then Disney in 2018 makes a movie about it, completely removes Jesus from the entire scripting. If you'll notice this, a lot of times corporations are hijacked from what they originally wanted to do and what they originally focused on, and it's taken completely the other way by the world. Like, for instance, a service industry will eventually become only for-profit industry. That'll be their only focus. And so it doesn't surprise us when something gets taken and twisted. But I assure you, and I haven't given any proof of this yet, but I assure you that the Lord of the Rings trilogy was so emblematic and symbolic of Christian things that Satan couldn't stand it, and so now he's building a TV series to destroy all the original symbolism. Let's dive in just briefly. And I'm going to tell you, I didn't screen the whole thing, but just the political agenda in it was unsettling. I'm like, are you kidding? Is this political agenda in everything these days? And it absolutely is. But let's say you step back past that. Galadriel, the heroine war leader of this series. This is kind of a portion of her story. Now, if you're familiar with Lord of the Rings, you'll know that nobody gets the complete story, but a lot of this is centered around Galadriel and her adventures and her focus and her motives, etc. And as she's a little child, she's having this encounter with these evil, wicked kids across the stream. And I think the evil, wicked kids were humans, and she's an elf, and there was this little clash. And then her big brother comes along and gives a brilliant and stunning metaphor to her. And it's beautiful. It is a beautiful metaphor. And so Galadriel had built this little boat, and it was floating down the stream, and the kids sank it. And so her big brother says, hey, Galadriel, do you know why the little boat could float to begin with? It's because it majestically looked up at the sun and wasn't focused on the things around it and kept its hopes high, etc. It was just a beautiful metaphor. And then it was crashed on purpose, as Galadriel was noticeable, like, well, the light coming off the water is brilliant as well. And so how does one know if the light from above or the light from beneath, how do they know which one is the true light? Can you figure any of that out for a second? Like, do you even see what's being represented here? And the way they left it hanging so that you were really intent on learning the truth of this phrase. Like, they left that hanging on purpose because her older brother leans over, whispers into her ear, and anytime there's a secret given on the screen, it's to catch the audience's attention so that later they really pay attention. Like, what did he tell her? I really want to know. Because if you're seeking answers, then you will hang on in a movie. That's one of the movie tricks. That's a good artistic trick. And so you're hanging on like, what is the answer? Like, how do I know good from evil? I know how to tell good from evil. God is good. Jesus is good. The Bible is good. Evil is everything opposite of that. That's just really simple. There's no magic here. There's no magic answer. There isn't a magic answer for Christians. You go back to Lord of the Rings, there's a presentation. People just kind of intuitively knew what was good and evil, just like Galadriel would have known. But, she's looking down and looking up. She's like, I don't know the difference. How do I know the difference? And then there's this key in. A couple of other phrases throughout the movie that I don't recall particularly. I just noticed that they were there. Well, the same thing, like it's hard to tell good and evil. It's hard to tell good from evil. Maybe in a very small amount of cases, it's hard to tell like what would be best or worse in this scenario. But typically when it comes between good and evil, a person knows. Most of the time, good and evil is just very clear. But all of a sudden, they're trying to muddle all that. You see, the original story of Lord of the Rings was about good and evil. But this new storyline is about relativism. We don't really know good or evil. It's kind of hard to tell. So as that is built up later, we find out the answer was, as her brother leans over, it's like, a lot of times, and I don't have the exact quote, but the basic point was, well, you don't really know if the light above is good or the light below is evil until you've kind of tasted it or dipped your fingers in it or until you've explored it. What? What do you, like, if you believe anything about symbolism, if you think symbolism has any merit at all, what are they trying to say? Like, oh, well, you might think God's ways are good and powerful and majestic and awesome, but you don't really know if evil is good or not until you've tested it, until you've tried it. Satan offers things like that all the time. How do you know if this drug is good or not? Try it. How do you know if this sexual foray with this woman is going to be good for you or not? Try it. How do you know if taking a shortcut here in your business and, getting ahead by cheating is good or not. Well, just try it. I mean, you don't know. And you maybe you'll find out that it's as much of a light as the other light. And maybe the bigger light is jealous of the lesser light. Maybe that's what it is. You need to understand that these themes are absolutely in there. If you don't think that symbolism is enough, in short order, I think it's the second episode. This is kind of running together with me. But in the second episode, Galadriel gets this fantastic promotion. Now, she is seeking an audience with the king. She has some very real disagreement with the king. She does not agree with the king's decisions. Think about that one for a minute. Just think about it. I'm not saying you can't put it in a movie, but if you're trying to destroy the Christianity of a movie previous, then this could be something. Okay, so just hang on with me. But she disagrees with the king's orders, and so she wants to voice those orders. But to quiet her, and this is kind of done as a political maneuvering, she is promoted to heaven. Now they call it something else in the series, but we all know from the original series that when little Hobbit gets on the boat and he sails off into the sunset, that he is making his final voyage over to the beautiful land, the land of bliss, the land, it's heaven, it represents heaven. And so all of a sudden Galadriel is shocked and she's like, I don't want to be promoted to heaven. I love what I'm doing here. Think about it. She didn't really want to be promoted to heaven. She wanted to take care of what she was doing here. Now it's funny because typically her role is she wants to find the Dark Lord and maybe kill him off. And if you go kill him off, then she's actually doing good. So there's kind of that underlying thing. But overall, you've got to understand that she is being promoted to heaven. She's like, I didn't really want promotion to heaven. I like what I'm doing here. And it was a ploy. You could tell it was a ploy. The promotion wasn't really a promotion. It was a ploy. It was a political maneuvering for something else. Now, if you know anything about how the world views Christianity, they think we sell heaven as a ploy. Yeah, the people in the world think that we use heaven as a false motivation to get weak-minded people just to do what we want them to do. It's a political maneuvering. It's a way to motivate people, and it had motivated all of her soldiers. It didn't motivate her. She's a little too sharp to know that going to the other side was a good thing. But all of her soldiers just kind of went along with it. They were motivated by the promotion, but it was political maneuvering. It was using them. Like, it wasn't necessarily that they were allowed or had done anything. You could tell that this was all at the king's behest. It wasn't because of their own motives. The king gave them the right to be promoted or not. And in this situation, the king was using it for political maneuvering, so he didn't have her around as a problem anymore. Again, if you can't see the connection there about the world thinking we use heaven as a term and a way of manipulation, then you're just blind. Like, do a little more research. So, as it goes on, as the movie progresses even further, and I haven't picked out all the themes. I'm just telling you the major ones that stood out to me. But now that they put her on this ship and she is leaving, she's concerned about where she's headed. She's very concerned about where she's headed. It doesn't matter if the king's given his approval or not. She's concerned about it. She's like, I don't know if this is where I want to be headed. Again, if you want any kind of symbolism or any kind of plant, then maybe you should be, maybe Christians should be concerned about where they're headed, because maybe it's not really the best thing for everybody. You've got to understand, in the context so far, what is best for everybody is for her to stay behind and her to find the bad guy and kill him, I suppose. And so that's what it seems like. And so what would be best for everybody is for her to work on her earthly duties and take care of that. And it doesn't matter if the king says heaven is the best thing for you or not. Like, you should probably be skeptical. And considering she's one of the main storylines of this movie, she's skeptical. And it's her right. She is in the right of being skeptical. You've got to see the framing of it. So as they are approaching heaven, the only thing that you ever see is pure light. Like, as the water comes and as it's beginning to break into the universe or the new land or whatever it is, you never see anything but pure light. You don't see an outline of anybody. You don't see an outline of a coastland. You don't see any of that. You just see pure light. You just see a bunch of light. Who calls himself the light? Who dwells in unapproachable light? Now, if the original Lord of the Rings series was pointing out Christian details, and the new Lord of the Rings series, as I'm proclaiming, is trying to do anti-Christian things, this really matters, because here Galadriel is now going into the light. And because she hasn't really tested or tasted the waters yet or tried the other path, the sparkling off the water, like her brother recommended, right at the last minute, she rejects the new land and jumps into the water, because that boat and all the soldiers on it that have been promoted are crossing over to never return, which helps you further understand this is emblematic of heaven. This represents heaven. It represents the thing that Christians promise that is on the other side. And she jumps off the boat, the Christian boat. I mean, think about it. So she jumps off of the boat to go back to doing the things that really matter in life. Emblematically and symbolically, she rejects heaven, or this super light experience. She rejects and turns her back on God for the greater good. Do you think I'm crazy at this point? Or do you think there might be something to this? I am certain that it's going to head down this road. Again, so many times Satan has come along and whitewashed Christianity totally out of the spectrum. And this series hasn't even waited around. It has, in the first 2 episodes, begin to present these ideas that you can't really tell good from evil, and the king might not have your best interest in mind, and you should be skeptical of going to heaven, and you should probably reject the light. Wow. Here's what I think you should do. And I'm thinking heavily upon this. I haven't absolutely decided this at this point. I just want to be transparent about that. But here's what I'm absolutely thinking about doing. I'm absolutely thinking about not watching the series at all. Because what that does is that decreases the downloads and it decreases the interest, and this whole thing may just get scrubbed if enough of us symbolically pass along that we don't support this type of destruction for our ideas and values. Think about it. I'm going to be doing the same.